Hi, my name is Brett Ryan. I'm the CEO of Focus on the Family Australia. Thank you for joining us with our Talking About series. We're going to be talking about friendships and relationships. So these are questions that often parents ask us about their child trying to develop friends with their schoolmates, and they're feeling a bit lonely, and then it actually progresses to making sure they choose the right friend, especially when it comes more serious. So we're going to give you some helpful tips about this idea about how to have healthy friendships, and hopefully that friendship will develop maybe to having a healthy relationship. We all want to belong. We want to all feel like we have friends, and we all want to feel like that we belong to a group of people. But unfortunately, here in Australia, more and more people suffer from loneliness. In fact, some statistics actually saying 1 in 4 Australians will suffer from some form of loneliness. And of those, they would say that they always feel, about 50% of those would feel always alone and never connected with anyone else. And 30% of people say they don't belong to any friendship groups. So we should never take friendships and relationships for granted, whether that's in our classrooms, whether that's in our churches, whether it's in our sporting groups. We should cherish those and do everything that we can to make it as healthy as possible. But some kids need a little bit of help along the way, and hopefully I'll be able to give you some tips that you can encourage your children to have healthier friendships. The Bible often has a lot of great advice, and if faith is not on your journey, thank you for joining us. But I'm going to share some Bible verses that will help unpack this in a way that many Christians will be able to relate to. It says in Luke 6:31, it says, "Do unto others that would have them do unto you." What are the golden rule? And we have to encourage our kids. If they want to have friends, they have to be friendly. If they want to be someone who is trusted, they have to be trustworthy. If they want to be someone who wants people to be kind to them, they have to be kind. So do unto others that you have them do unto you. And when they choose their friends, we want them to choose wisely. It says in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." So if you hang around certain types of people, you'll be influenced by them. So we want to encourage our children to choose wisely. And that is the same with at home, is that our kids will pick up certain qualities and characteristics, that the good and the bad. And so we have to be good role models of the way that we talk about our friends, the way that we relate to them, with the way we show kindness and compassion. And if we don't choose wisely, how are we expecting our kids to choose wisely? So we want our kids to have lasting, long friendships. And this is a difficult thing. We don't often have lasting friendships. In fact, I can only think on one hand how many people that I know that I've lasted through the generations of time. In fact, my best friend, we've been friends for over 35 years. And we met as teenagers, and we've hit it off ever since. And despite our distances and life and different circumstances, we see each other on a very regular basis. But that's only one person. We can't expect our kids to have that one person right from the word go, but they're actually going to develop the skills and be the type of person that people want to hang around. Unfortunately, in our fast-paced world and our digital world that we live in, and kids being on screens and communicating on social platforms, we've lost the art of how to have a healthy friendship. There's emotional intelligence, the ability to pick up cues and things like that. And we often live in a digital or virtual world rather than the real world. So we have to actually help our kids learn how to communicate, to be genuinely interested in the other person, to ask questions. To role model this is really important. I often say to, when I meet a new person, tell me your story. And now I hear my sons do the same thing. They often start a conversation, tell me your story. And it's not necessarily what they do, but who they are and what's made them who they are right now. And so I encourage you to get your kids to be genuinely interested in what the other people are interested in, whether it could be sport, or whether it could be movies or TV shows or games or whatever it may be. If you show genuine interest, you may not be interested in yourself, but you're showing genuine interest in them. So we need to be a good listener, and teaching our kids how to listen rather than speak all the time is something that's going to take a lot of work, especially those kids who are very verbal and they want to keep on talking and filling in the gaps and they don't like to be quiet or they don't like to sit still. We need to teach them. And so one way we can do that is simply to role model or role play at home. There's a young boy over there and they're sitting by themselves. Pretend that I am him and you go and have a conversation with them so they can feel more confident. How to have a healthy conversation, build up trust, build up a rapport, and just be genuinely interested in them, and that role playing could give your child, especially if they're a little bit reserved, and especially if they're a little bit shy and not too sure of themselves, that may be the start of them being more confident of meeting complete strangers. We all want our kids to fit in, and a lot of kids spend a lot of time and energy trying to blend in and not stand out in the crowd. But we want our kids to be genuine. We want them to be themselves, not trying to be other people. And that's difficult at times because kids want to fit into the crowd and behave or speak or act a certain way. And we want them to be able to be themselves. And unfortunately, kids have this tension, especially if they wanted to be accepted by their peers. And you also want them to, as I said, to be ones of good character, because if they hang around kids of bad character, it's going to rub off somewhere along the line. And one of the things that, as we've already said before, is to do unto others that you have them do unto you, is teaching our kids to treat one another with respect and dignity and value. And that starts in the home, how they treat their siblings, and then that will flow into how they treat their friends at school. Another thing they need to be able to do that with that respect and dignity and value is learn to be trusted. So if their friend tells them something, they don't go and tell somebody else. Those things alone, just those little things of role playing and being an active listener and be genuinely interested in them and having a conversation and treating them with value and dignity and respect could be the start of your children feeling more confident to building that relationship. And I'd encourage them and encourage you to invite their friends over. Have the friends come to your house, not live on digital world and their gaming world, but have them over for a bit of a play date, and they can have a lot of fun and activities, cook together and play together and just have fun, and it creates those memories, and you can build that trust because they can only do so much at school, and it's so much better to do that at home. So build that relationship with their friends, your child's friends, that they feel safe, that they want to come over to your household. So now that we've talked about friendships and we want our kids to choose wisely with their friends, we also want them to choose wisely when it comes to having a boyfriend or girlfriend. So now we're going to be talking about relationships. This is a conversation that many parents are saying, oh man, do I have to talk about this? Yes, you do. And the better and the more earlier you start these healthy conversations, the better it is for you later on, because you'll have a clash if it suddenly comes along. They say, Mum or Dad, I want to have a boyfriend or girlfriend. And you're going, no way, not on my watch. Many parents say they're allowed to have a boyfriend or girlfriend when they're 33 or when they've finished all their schooling, they've got a deposit on their house and they've been working for 5 years. That doesn't really quite work it. So I would encourage you to have some guidelines of when you think it's appropriate for you to allow your children to have a boyfriend or girlfriend. And I don't want to give you a prescriptive idea, but what I can tell you is what we did in our household. We've got 3 young boys, and we told them we'd encourage them to have friends with lots of people of both genders and encourage them to interact with as many people as possible. But we also put in the caveat is that we would encourage them not to have a girlfriend in high school. We would say, wait till you've finished year 12. When you've established yourself, when you know what you want and what you don't want and who you are, because you're going to stay with these kids for a long time in high school, and it can be a bit awkward, especially when you start going out with somebody and you break up, and often it's only 2 to 3 months later on. So we'd encourage you to, maybe that's a rule of thumb, but every child's different and they're on different maturity levels, but we want them to have healthy relationships, but not to settle down with that one special person for as long as they can, because they're still trying to sort out who they are, what they want, what they don't want. And at the age of 16, 17, they don't know what they want and what they don't want. So I would encourage you to have that conversation. What do you want in your future boyfriend or girlfriend? Or alternatively, why do you want a boyfriend or girlfriend? And it'll be interesting to have an ongoing conversations with them, because they may have, oh, I want to just fit into the crowd. And this is when you can actually work out why they wanted to have a relationship in the first place, and actually get them to start thinking more intentionally about the list, the non-negotiables, about what they are looking for in a future lifelong partner. I don't know where you are on your faith journey, but many parents want their children to choose wisely when it comes to having someone with the same values and belief systems. And that's the reason why this verse in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 14 comes into play. It says, do not be joined to unbelievers. Some verses in the Bible or some translations say, do not be unequally yoked. What do right and wrong have in common? Can light and darkness be friends? What you're really saying is that you want children to have the idea that it may seem attractive, that this person looks attractive from the outside, but you also want to know what's going on the inside. And for this, it's not just about someone with the same beliefs or values or faith, but you also want them to have the same drive, same purpose, same energy levels. And maybe sometimes they're not a deal breaker, but sometimes family of origin, that it won't be too of a clash between the two different families. So this unequally yoked is actually saying you want to choose your lifelong partner wisely and to have the same value systems as you. So when we're going into a little bit more serious in the relationships, is that, when they choose that person, does that person make them a better person? Do they challenge them to become a better person? Do they encourage you to be the very best version of yourself? And if you're doing all the work to try and maintain the relationship and they're not doing anything, then it's not a long-term relationship prospect. Don't always date potential, I would say to a child. And so mums and dads, you need to actually have these conversations with your kids. They might look good on the outside and you say, oh, when I get onto them, they'll become the best husband or the best wife. No, you don't marry or date potential. You have to accept them, warts and all, even the flaws. And if things that bug you now and they're annoying and you say, oh, that's okay, later on it'll be okay, they'll change, I can guarantee you those bugs, those flaws will become huge later on, and you will kick yourself for not addressing them earlier. And many kids will say, especially if they've got a faith and they're actively involved in the church, they might see someone's potential and they go, oh, they'll become a wonderful Christian. They'll become the best Christian known, as long as they become a Christian. There's an expression called missionary dating, which means that you actually find your lifelong partner or pretend that everything's going to go fine. They're going to become a wonderful Christian, but we don't flirt to convert. I would encourage you to choose someone with the same values, same belief systems, the same faith as you, and on the same trajectory of journey of understanding of who God is. Because often I hear people saying, well, they ticked all the boxes. My non-negotiable list, the one that I made when I was a teenager. They're not a Christian yet, but they're open to it. You're playing with fire, because I've heard so many stories time and time again where a prospective person ticked all the boxes and then they got married, and then that person who said they were going to come to church decided not to come to church anymore. Or they were coming to church on a regular basis, and once they got married, they started to decrease their attendance and involvement. That's why it's so vitally important is that you choose someone that is not unequally yoked, that you're together. You're together on mission, you're together with purpose, you're together on the same trajectory as you want God to be and is talking to you, and they in turn have the same conversation with God. I cannot emphasize that enough. And I know there'll be some people saying, well, my uncle and auntie, they weren't Christians when they got married, and one of them was, and then the other guy came along and he became a wonderful Christian. Yes, for every one of those stories, I can tell you 200 or 300 heartbreaking stories. So I always encourage people, especially mums and dads, to have these conversations with your children, especially if they are active in the church, not to choose someone who is not as active. And it's not so much involved in the church, but it's having a healthy relationship with God. Because it takes two healthy individuals to make a healthy relationship. And so they need to be the very best version of themselves, and the other person needs to be the very best version of themselves. So encourage them to build a friendship. Encourage them to have lots of friends, as I said to you before, and interact in groups, because that's a great way of observing how they do life with other people. And don't isolate yourself with that, just being by yourself all the time and removing yourself from your friendship groups, because one person is not going to complete you. That other person complements you. And if we can encourage our kids to have a broader perspective, because often they're just a here and now. They want to have that boyfriend. They want to have that girlfriend. They'll fit into the crowd a lot more. No. They need to have lots of healthy relationships with lots of people, interacting in groups, because then you can actually get to see how your prospective boyfriend or girlfriend interact, how they deal with stress, how they deal with anger, how they deal with your friends, how they deal with your family. And also, really important thing is how you watch and observe them with their parents or their siblings, because that can tell you a lot of stories. My mother used to always say, see the 4 seasons. And obviously you could actually say at least 12 months of dating someone before you get engaged. That's a good rule of thumb, but it's also the seasons of life: stress, frustrations, annoyance when things don't go to plan. We have our ups and downs in life, and that's when we see how our potential lifelong partner does with life. And so it's vitally important to observe them, how they treat others. And if you've got some little red flags or alarm bells, it will not change. Because as I said to you before, if things that bug you now, they're not going to get any better later on. They'll only get bigger. And one of the things I'd often say to young people or young adults when they're talking about relationships and the dating game is that we are innately selfish. We don't like to share ourselves with other people. There'll be some people who do, but we're innately selfish. And so when you're in a long-term relationship, and hopefully that will lead to a long-term, healthy, lifelong marriage, is you have to be prepared to lay down your life. You have to be prepared to prefer the other person and want what's best for them. And if you're not prepared to do that, then relationships right at this moment aren't for you, because we are innately selfish. And I think it's really important, when I talked about the healthy individuals, is that we need to deal with our baggage, those things that hurts of the past, maybe those things of addiction, maybe those things of behaviors that if we haven't dealt with them, it's not going to go away just simply by having a relationship. We need to deal with the baggage and those things that really are ugly as we're growing up and as we've grown into mature adults. If we take that baggage into the relationship thinking that they'll go away, we're living in la la land. We're not living in reality. In fact, the most important thing is to go in with as much of free from baggage. And that's the reason why I'd also talk to young people about choosing wisely, because you can't take that baggage into the next relationship. And that's the reason why we want to have encourage our young people to have a spirit of purity so they can have true intimacy. I mentioned also before this idea of how they deal with stress, how they deal with their conflict, and but another thing is how they deal with money. If you're a good saver and the other person's a good spender, then there's a clash. You might say, well, they'll learn to control their money. No, if they're not really good as a single person and then as a dating person good with their money, it will only get worse later on. Are they generous with you? Are they generous with others? That's another good sign to look out for. I mean, dating really is a way to evaluate if this person is marriage material. And if you're going in with a relationship, I'll see how it goes and maybe we'll lean into it. But if you're thinking when you're dating somebody and you can't see a lifelong future with them, I would encourage you to get out earlier. It may be short-term pain early on, long-term gain later on. So many people say, oh, it'll be okay later on, but unfortunately there's no getting out of jail free card. Once you're married, ideally it should be for better or for worse, for richer and poorer, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. So I'd encourage you, if you're going with somebody and it seems to be a bit more serious and you think that this could be a lifelong partner, then have your eyes wide open, because when you get married, then you have to narrow them a little bit, because we all have flaws, we all have challenges that we don't like. But if you're going in and you're seeing red flags and things saying that's not a good thing and I should be alert to it, I would prefer for you as mums and dads to have these conversations with your kids, because let's face it, once the heart gets engaged, the brain often disengages. And we need to encourage our young people to be as alert to some of the concerns, because they might have blinkers on. They may not see all those things. And that's when we have an ongoing conversation. You can't make them change. You can only coach them and encourage them and have you considered. But at the end of the day, you need to still be on their team. And that's easier said than done, especially if they're making unwise decisions, because you want them to have their heart protected. There's a verse in the Bible where it says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And I can't emphasize this enough. Not only guarding your own heart, but you're also guarding the heart of the other person. So treat them with value, treat them with dignity, treat them with respect, and treat them like they're somebody else's future partner. Until you're married, treat them with that much respect. And if they're not yours, don't do things or say things that aren't yours to say or do. And finally, I'd like to leave you with one verse. And I've used this often in a lot of conversations I have with youth and young adults. And in mums and dads, we need to emphasize this, where it says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but by the renewing of your mind. Which means that just because the world's saying you have to hook up or you have to have a boyfriend or girlfriend to fit in, no, we want to help you as mums and dads to have children that can be countercultural, that want to stand out in the crowd, to be a little bit different, to choose wisely, not just to fit in with their peers, but to be ones that can actually saying, I know where I'm going. I know what my values are. I know what my beliefs are. I know my relationship with God is healthy, and I want to have that great vertical relationship so I can have a great horizontal relationship with others. Have a goal in mind. You don't want to be too picky. I understand that. You can become quite frustrated with having every box. There are no perfect boxes. There are no perfect human beings in this world. But we also want to have a standard. Don't lower that standard when it comes to having a relationship, because so many people have regretted making those decisions. So mums and dads, I would encourage you to have these conversations with your children. Talk about it from a very early age. Talk about it in the car, talking about it at home, around the dinner table, just about life. It doesn't mean that you talking about it means it's going to force them. In fact, it makes them a bit more discerning, because you want to guard their heart, because everything flows from it. And having these healthy conversations early on and having them ongoing will help them to make wise choices later on. If we at Focus on the Family can be of any support or encouragement to you, please do not hesitate contacting us at families.org.au. God bless.